and for the .NET. So you can, if you want, you can also join by using this URL. Okay, and if you are interested in means presenting or organizing the sessions, so you can reach out any of us. And this is our YouTube channel, MVP YouTube channel. So we are the like 5 organizers for this community. So you can reach any of us if you have any presentation or organizing if you want. Actually, last month we have done a couple of sessions on DevOps. So because December was completely dedicated to DevOps. So if you are interested in more on DevOps, so you can take a look of this DevOps series, which is available on our YouTube channel, MEP YouTube channel. So this is the link here. So yeah. And in today's sessions, Lohith is going to speak on designing the API. So Lohith is a lead means programmer for Xamarin. So he is also a ex Microsoft MVP, and he is a he's a Microsoft ex MVP, and he have couple of he have a lot of experience designing the APIs.
अब तो मैं खेलूंगा ही नहीं तुम्हारे साथ, जाओ तो तुम्हें लेके भी नहीं जाऊंगा कहीं।
Sorry guys. Okay. And so this is actually going to be a 4-part series. So next 3 parts is like DevOps on the API, implementing the API and implementing the consumer. So it's going to be in couple of next months or maybe March. So, and if you want to like see some related sessions we have done in past, so you can see on our YouTube channel. We have done some related to microservices. So you can see here. And in our there is also one big event happening on this Saturday on this for the Power Apps. So if you are interested, you can go on the meetup link, meetup.com, and there is a Azure Data Community, which is our community. So you can see there. It's a Microsoft Biz App online event which is happening on Saturday. It's a full day like event. There are a couple of speakers from different countries are going to present there. So, and there is also a URL given here, so you can join. And after that, there is on 28th January, there is also one data session happening. If you are interested related to Azure Synapse Analytics or some DBA related Windows functions, so this session might be for you. And this is our YouTube channel, MVP YouTube channel. So all our sessions recordings will be available here. Okay, and we have also some chartbuster sessions we have done in past, so you can also take a look in on our YouTube channel, which is available. And last but not the least, there are a few reminders. Please keep please keep yourself on mute. And if you have any questions, so you can raise hand feature. And this session is going to be recorded. And if you like the session, please spread the words on your Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn or time. So over to you, Lohit.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. It's raining here in Singapore, a much needed kind of a temperature drop. So let me share my screen. Thanks to Asif for the introduction. So I'm gonna get my screen. Let me know, guys, if you're able to see my screen.
Yeah, I can.
Cool. Okay. Thank you. Welcome to everybody. I think I see people trickling in now. My name is Lohith, as Asif said. Today we're going to be talking about serverless architecture. Basically, I needed a title, so I thought for a while, and then I said, okay, let's do a real world end-to-end application demo. The idea was basically to make sure I've been doing a lot of serverless over the last 1.5 years. I moved to Singapore May 2019, and then we've been building a platform for one of our customers, and then we have like 16 APIs that we built, and then everything is an Azure function, and then it is running, perfectly well. We made sure that we do it in such a way that it's like a microservice-oriented architecture. So I wanted to showcase, like in real world, in a project, how can you use serverless, starting from the design till the consumer. That was the premise of this. I reached out to the user group, moderators, and I said, "Hey, would you like to get on a session like this? We have been building some cool stuff. We can showcase how we are doing things in project day to day, day in and day out." So that's where this series started. So welcome, and then a little bit about me. A slight correction. I work as a technology lead, not a lead programmer, but I lead the technology in my consulting firm. I work for a company called Xamariners Pte Limited. We are one of the premier partners for Microsoft in Singapore and Malaysia, and you name it in the APAC. I call myself as a coder, as you can see here. So basically, I've been on Microsoft.NET for 2 decades now. I'm extremely sorry you cannot see me today. That's basically, I have no clue why Teams is not picking up my camera. I tried everything that I can think of, but looks like there's some other plugin or something which is kind of interfering with what Teams wants to do, and then Teams is like, sorry, I can't figure out your camera. So sorry about that, but on the screen, that's how I look. That's actually a photograph which was taken by my wife, and then that became my social identity. So I give all the credit to her. As I said, I've been on Microsoft.NET way back from 2001. I think it was .NET 1.1 that came out during that time when I finished my graduation, and then I did Java tanked, and then .NET, and then from 2001 and onwards, 2 decades on .NET. It's been a fantastic journey, going on. As I said, I'm a technology lead at Xamariners Pte Limited here in Singapore. As Asif said, I'm an ex-Microsoft MVP. Uh, MVP is not a certification that you can write and then get it. Mostly Asif, Nilesh, all those guys know. It's completely different. You got to be in the user group. You got to talk. You got to write. You need to promote your passion about the technology, and then that's how Microsoft identifies you and says like, "Hey, you're a most valuable professional for us. So please, here's a title that we can give you." So I've been a MVP from 2011 to 2018 in Visual Studio, ASP.NET area. I've been an ex-evangelist for Telbrick India. Did a evangelism job for the last 6 years. I'm also an author, as you can see. I wrote a couple of books. One was I co-authored with three of my friends, Windows 10 development recipes. Then I wrote Windows Phone 7.5 application development using F Sharp. Can you believe it? F Sharp on Windows Phone. Well, it doesn't make sense now, but yeah, when it came out, why not? So that was a cool, thing that I did, project that I did. And then also I recorded a couple of video courses for Pack Publishing. It's mostly on ECMAScript, and then what is ECMAScript, and then ECMAScript 2016, 2015. What do you want to do? So all those kind of things. So I speak, as you can see. This is my first talk in 2021. I took a break in 19 and 20, so now I'm coming back. Whatever I can do, and coronavirus is COVID has kind of given me an opportunity to just sit in my room and then present to an audience worldwide like this. So thanks to MS SGUG. So yeah, let's get started. That's a brief about me. The series that I was thinking was like this. I show you a couple of things, starting with designing the API. Then we take a look at DevOps for the API. This is completely different than what most people will do. And this is how I tell my team to do it. You first design, you generate the code, and then the first thing that I make sure my team does is DevOps. Create a build, create a release, create an infrastructure, boom, that's it. Go ahead, deploy it. Once your pipeline is there, it becomes a smooth ride for you when you're doing your features. You just check in your code, boom, it's there on your environment, and then you can start taking a look at it. So that is why I want to showcase to you what we do day in and day out in our projects, and this is exactly how I do it. I design, I do the DevOps, and then I implement the API. I don't worry about implementation right from the day one, right? It's all about design, DevOps. Okay, it's there, it is sitting there. In fact, in our sprint, we call it as foundation sprint. The foundation sprint is nothing but A developer does Visual Studio file new project. That's it. File new project, nothing else. Just check in the code. Once the code gets in, our DevOps team picks it up and then starts writing the CI build and the CD, and then they create the infra build, whatever is required for that particular sprint. And that's it. We build the pipeline. And then the team starts doing the features. And then finally, we'll take a look at like, okay, I designed the API, and then how do I consume it? So we're going to build a consumer maybe in the part 4. The premise of this whole journey, the 4-part series, is something like this. I'm assuming you're having a familiarity with the .NET ecosystem. You're familiar with Azure. You're familiar with serverless as an architectural pattern. You're also familiar with Azure Function. I'm not looking for in-depth Azure Function knowledge, but basically you should know what is a function. Okay, Azure Functions is the serverless offering from Azure, right? Serverless means many things, and there are many products available within Azure. And Azure Functions is my pet peeve, as we call it. It's one of my pet offerings in the Azure itself. I'm mostly a PaaS guy, the platform as a service. I'm not into infrastructure as a service, but mostly onto PaaS because I don't want to take the headache of the hardware. I leave it to Microsoft. And then I design in such a way that how can I make sure my business goals are met, my business objectives are met, my business motives are met. And then of course I'm assuming C#, because I'm going to be showcasing the whole journey using C#, Azure Function, and Azure and .NET ecosystem. So that's what you should be knowing as a prerequisite. Now let's start the action for today. Of course, the series won't make sense if there is no problem statement, correct? So the problem statement is very simple. Who has not heard of Contoso Limited, correct? If you're in Microsoft, platform, or if you're in Microsoft, you're working anything in Microsoft, Contoso, Northwind Traders, Fabricam, well, these are the fantastic fictitious, business houses you can think of. So even today, for this particular journey, we're going to be part of the Contoso Limited. Assume you all are part of Contoso Limited and you're part of Contoso's API development team, right? Very simple. You're part of the team which does API for Contoso. Now, the problem statement is somebody comes to you and then says, hey, team, you are tasked with development of an API to manage employee to-dos, right? Maybe you're thinking at this moment like, oh, there he goes again. It's yet another to-do to build. Well, just bear with me for a minute. The to-do is not the objective of this whole journey. I'm just taking a small example so that I can showcase how we do things. And to-do is the simplest API that you can build. But the objective here is not to focus on what API we're building, but the journey is how do you design an API? How do you generate code for the API? How do you implement the API? How do you write a consumer? And we use Azure Functions as as the platform, Azure as a serverless platform to build this API, right? So you're part of Contoso Limited. You're supposed to build an API which manages employees to-dos. That's the problem statement, right? Now, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? As a developer, maybe 5 years ago, 6 years ago, when I was just starting, the moment somebody told me a problem, my brain would start to imagine, oh yeah, I can do this class. Okay, this class is going to be named like this. Okay, this class is going to have these properties. Boom, boom, boom. Like your imagination starts to run wild within your brain, and you're already in your coding space or coding land, as we call it, right? That's what you typically do. I'm like, probably even today, some of you will say like, oh, easy. He wants to just build an API to do. Let me open up my Visual Studio and boom, I'm done. I'm going to just right click, file, new project, Azure function. What is he talking about? Why do you code or not to code? Right? Yeah. So I know everybody goes through that. Even my team is like, yeah, let's start coding. I'm like, no, guys, hang on. Let's do the standard way. Let's do something which is already, we're not the only ones who are building these things. So the question is to code or not to code, right? I would say not to code first. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's spend a little bit. Let's take a moment to look at an analogy between database development and then the API development. So who doesn't know a database, right? So typically any project that you go through, you need to have a database. So database is nothing but like a container, and you have a bunch of tables, you have a bunch of indexes, and then you got to design your tables. So what are the ways you can do? Well, one of the ways that we all know are to certain extent, maybe like to 50 to 60% of the projects even today follow what's called as a database first. If you're hearing this for the first time, well, I encourage you to go read up on all this stuff. Like, what do we mean by database first? So it's fairly simple. You take T-SQL statements and then you build your database. You say create table, table name. In fact, most of the DB administrator, what they do is on their laptop, on their desktop, they have SQL Server or SQL Express or whatever. The moment they need to design a database, well, they use certain, like some people go and then directly start designing the tables right within the SQL Express, or we have SSMS as we call it, SQL Server Management Studio, and the studio is great for doing all this kind of POC ad hoc and all those things. So they start first by writing the T-SQL statements, right? Or they use some sort of DB modeling softwares, and then they model it, and then the code is generated afterwards. So that's why we call it as database first. Use T-SQL statements. Then in the landscape of .NET, we got a brand new concept. It was called code first, meaning, hey, you're not going to use T-SQL. No. So what do we do? Well, you will use plain old CLR objects to define your database. Okay, but that's just C#, that's not T-SQL. Correct. So what do you do? Well, you will use something called as a ORM, Object Relational Mapper. There is Entity Framework, there is Dapper, you name it. So what do these guys do? Well, they understand your POCO, and then they understand that, oh, you want to create a database like this. Okay, I'm going to write the T-SQL for you. So that's why Entity Framework is fantastic. I just worry about the language that I know of, which is C#. I don't need to worry about anything else. So Entity Framework takes away that, or abstracts that whole, as I say, PaaS is about abstracting the hardware, and Microsoft takes care of the hardware, and then I take care of my code. It's exactly the same with code first. Entity Framework takes away the headache of maintaining, or sorry, writing that particular T-SQL statements to create your database. What you do is you just design your database like as if like it was a C# object. So you say like, I have a blog, I have an author. Oh, a blog is written by an author. An author writes a lot of blogs. Well, there you go. That's your design using the C# object. We call it as POCO. Now, let's go with the similar analogy with the API. In the API, we also have what's called as a design first. You don't need to jump into the code. Then what do I do? Well, you just design it. So what do you mean by design? Well, you need to come up with what we call as an open API specification or open API standard, and design your API, express your API. I'm not sure if many of you have worked with, let's say, XML web services. If yes, just in the chat window, try to, I don't know, I'm currently on Teams. I'm assuming the code is, the chat is going to be coming up there. So if you have worked with XML web services, you pretty much will know that there used to be something called as WSDL, WSDL, Web Service Description Language. Why did we have that? Well, making use of the WSDL, any application could generate the code and then generate what we call as a clients again as that particular XML web service. It's exactly the same reason why you want to do an API first, or design first as we call it. Open API spec is basically a set of specification to describe your REST APIs, and then that's a standard now. If you're building a REST API, well, you better make sure that you are confronting to the Open API standards, or you're doing the Open API specification into your APIs. Then we also have a concept of code first, meaning, well, the code first is always there. Just go out and then just code it out. Yeah, so Asif is saying, like, if anybody has any questions, please ping into the chat box. Yes, please, thank you. I keep looking at it. Whenever I can take the question, I'll try to. I've already spent 20 minutes, and then I still have a lot of demos to go through, so I'm going to speed up a little bit. So in an analogy between DB and API, this is how it is. In DB, you can do database first or code first. In API, you can still do the design first or the code first. So code first is like, yeah, I'm not going to do anything except I'm going to open up my Visual Studio, file, new project, done, I'm done. So that's code first. But we're going to take a look at design first today. So let's spend some moment with understanding what is Open API. If you have been programming with ASP.NET for a couple of, basically, I don't know, from last 5 to 6 years, you might have heard about a word called Swagger, right? There used to be what's called as a Swagger definition. Well, it was very simple. Hey, I know you have ASP.NET, and within the ASP.NET you have Web API. So I'm going to define your Web API. So Swagger is an open source project, and then it was smart enough to go through, look at your Web APIs, and then spit out what's called as a definition. Now today, what the industry did was they said, "Oh, that's a good thing, but let's make it a standard." Okay, so that's how this whole concept of Open API initiative was formed. And there are all the companies like Microsoft, Google, you name it, everybody is there as a consortium, and then they're trying to say like, yes, let's bring a standard to the REST API, because there was nothing to define your REST API. There was nothing to express your REST API. So if you are a producer, how do I consume? How do I know how your REST API looks like? I have no clue. So now with the REST Open API initiative, well, people are working towards a how design first approach works in a startup where domain knowledge is evolving and contracts are not well defined. Well, it's the same case with any projects, right? You need to take a baby steps. You evolve your Open API the way you start evolving your code. As I said, sprint one, I'm just going to focus on one API. Okay, so just go ahead and then create the first only that first particular path or the operation, and then you start evolving. Because Open API spec is a file, we're going to look at it. It can be source controlled. So version 1, you have only 2 endpoints. Version 3, you have 10 endpoints. Okay, evolve it over the time. That's what it is. What are some of the tools or best practice design? That's exactly this whole session is all about. What tools? How do I do it? What to use? So please hang in with me. I'm trying to create a story here. I'm trying to make sure that I show you a big picture. So you just have to walk with me every slide. I'm not going to have too much slide. I'm going to get into the demo soon. But it is very, very important for me to set the baseline, set the foundation. This is the foundation. So as I said, when ASP.NET Web API became popular, there was an open source project called Swagger, or somebody also knows it as Swashbuckle. So what it did was it looked at your Web API and then spit out a definition to say that, oh, this is how your API looks like, so that somebody else could consume that definition and then build code around it, right? That led to what we have today called as Open API initiative. Okay, that's called as Open API initiative, or you might also see it as OAI, right? Oscar Alpha India. So the Open API specification is nothing but it's a broadly adapted industry standard for describing modern APIs. There you go. This is just simple what it says. Open API initiative is a consortium of companies who are, we're trying to bring a standard. The Open API spec is a broadly adapted standard for describing modern APIs. If you're interested to know how does this spec look like, well, please go head over to this URL that I have, spec.openapis.org. By the way, openapis.org. That's the place for this. Can this modeling design cover authentication and role-based authorization too, including APIM? Well, Erwin, you got to understand one thing. I'm just designing my API. I cannot bring in any APIM, or I cannot bring in anything which is physical in nature. This is just a design which describes. Here is Lohith. Lohith is 42-year-old. He's working as a technology lead. Yeah, that's what you're trying to do with the Open API design. Spec. The spec is all about talking about what is the API. Oh, the API is developed by so and so author, it is under so and so license. It has this many paths. Each path has this many operation, and each operation expects this many parameters, and each operation will throw back this many responses. Right? I may have a 200, I may have a 400, I may have a 405. You name it. So that is what you're describing in your designing. So APIM is a physical implementation, or what we call as a reverse proxy for your API. It has got nothing to do with design. The designing the API is all about what endpoints do I have. Keep in mind, today's problem statement is you need to develop an API to manage employees to do. So we're going to start looking into that also. Okay, so the Open API initiative is the consortium which is working towards a standardization. Open API specification is adopted industry standard for describing modern APIs. Very simple. OAI, OAS. Okay, so you will start seeing these acronyms, everywhere. And if you want to know the spec itself, spec.openapis.org, OAS. As I said, OAS stands for Open API specification. And currently we're at V303, right? That's where the OpenAPI spec is currently. Now, OpenAPI, OAS, Swagger. Well, what are all these things? Very simple. OpenAPI initiative is nothing but it is working towards the standardization or the specification to describe your modern API. Swagger is nothing but a commercial tool, or I think it's taken over by Smart Bear. Smart Bear is a commercial company. I mean, Smart Bear is a company which sells commercial tools for testing and all the stuff. They now have Swagger under the belt. Swagger has now become the commercial tool provider for working with OpenAPI spec, right? So they provide the tools. They have OpenAPI editor. They have OpenAPI. I don't know what else. Yeah, so they are OpenAPI UI. If you have an Open API specification, they have they're able to read that spec and then give you a fantastic UI which will showcase like, hey, this is how it looks like, your API looks like. So that's Swagger by Smart Bear provides you the tools. Open API initiative is nothing but defining the standards or the specs to describe your REST API. This is very important to understand. Now, let's go to designing the API, the meat of today's talk, right? So there are some of the things that you need to understand when you work with these any specification, right? There are certain things that you need to take care. These are the bare minimum things your Open API spec needs to contain for your API. Okay, info. You got to provide info about your API. Paths, well, these are nothing but your paths to your API endpoint. You call it as API endpoint. And every path can have operation. Can I do a get? Can I do a post? Can I do a put? Can I do a delete? What do I provide at that particular path? Then components. Well, I have a post method. So what do I expect in the post? Well, the schema is like this. So you got to talk about components. You got to talk about schema, like what schema of the incoming payload. Then security scheme. All my APIs are secured by maybe a JWT token or OAuth2 JWT token, or I'm expecting a X API key header. You name it. You can define all this stuff. So keep in mind, it is not implementing authentication. It is not implementing authorization. It is not implementing the API. You are just designing. You can think of this as like this. You want to build a house, but you go to a civil engineer. What he does is he's going to give you a blueprint. Open API spec is exactly that. The blueprint is going to tell you like, hey, my house is going to look like this. The room is on this corner. The kitchen is in this corner. I enter the house through this door. That's exactly what Open API spec is all about. You're describing your API so that somebody else can read that and say, the API looks like this. Okay, we can generate the server code, or we can generate the client code based on that spec. Now the spec becomes your living document. Okay, so somebody was asking what are the tools of the trade. So there's many tools of the trade available. I was looking at it. I'm like, oh, okay, there are plenty of things available. There is, of course, Swagger editor. Okay, it's from Smart Bear, and then Swagger editor is free. You can go online, or you can it's available on GitHub, and you can run it on your machine, and then you can start coding your Open API spec for your APIs. And then there is also Insomnia. It's another alternative for Swagger editor. Insomnia also has the HTTP client. I mean, like a Postman. Also, Postman recently, probably like last year, they introduced API editor. So now you can start API definitions right within your Postman, and then go all the way to implementing your mock API server. You can build a mock API server based on the the API spec that you're writing. Also, Visual Studio Code. Who doesn't know VS Code now, right? It's become one of the popular open source editor. VS Code also has a community member has written an Open API extension for VS Code. It's also fantastic. I'm going to showcase it to you now in the moment. So now, we're going to do a demo about open API specification, right? So this is typically how my team and myself we start. So I usually start with a notepad, and then I sit with my team and say, like, guys, we're gonna build an API. So what do we need? We need to get all the APIs, sorry, to dos. So probably we need something called as to dos as an endpoint. What will this be? Well, this is going to be an HTTP GET. Okay. Then I want to create a new to do. So we got to do a post, but where do we do it? Oh, we're going to do it on to dos itself. Okay, now I created a new to do. How do I retrieve one single to do? Okay, based on the RESTful patterns, well, I think you got to do something like this. So we're going to do to do ID. Okay, so example is slash to do's. And then I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever, right? That's how it is going to be. Oh, okay, I got the to do. Now I want to update the to do. What do I do? Well, very simple. We're going to do a post on the to do itself. Oh, hang on. So what will this post look like? Okay, let's try to do something here. Maybe we need an ID. That's the identifier of the to do. We need the title of the to do. Then I need to know, is it completed? So is completed. It's going to be a Boolean. Then I'm going to do a created, and then I'm going to have a completed, and then I need to know which user this belongs. As I said, please do not go into the nitty-gritties of this is not building the to-do API correct. Why would you need a user kept here? So as I said, the motive, the objective of today's session is not to pick on am I doing the API right, but the objective is pick a simple API and then showcase how do you design and then how do you implement it. So in order to keep it very simple and in order to not have too many restrictions for me to do showcase this, I'm going with this particular payload, which is like I have an identifier, title is completed, created, completed, and this to do belongs to basically a user. Okay, now this is my payload to the post. Well, it's going to be the same payload for here, the post, and then I want to update. So this is going to be like a list. Then this is going to be we're going to go the route of CRUD, right? So this is read, and then we're going to do create. Then again, this is a read. Then we have an update, right? So we created CRUD now. Now we need to also need one more thing. So I have a to do. How do I delete a to do? Oh, okay. So that means we just need one more, which is like delete. Yeah, delete to dos and then to do I and then delete. So we covered the basic building block of our modern API. I have a slash to do. That's my route. Slash to dos. I'm going to do an HTTP post that will create the to do. And then I have to dos slash the identifier of the to do that is going to give me that particular to do. This looks good. Okay. So this is exactly how I do with my team. I sit with them, I open up a notepad and it's like, okay, let's identify, is this route correct? As I said, this is very simple API definition that we are doing, but we go to a lot of extent to, and we fight over the naming. Whether you believe it or not, I'm very picky about naming. I fight with my team and like, no, this is not correct. The naming is not correct. We got to make sure we name it right. So I go to that extent. So now, how do I convert this into Open API spec? First, let's go to Swagger editor. So if you go to editor.swagger.io, this is the cloud-based as they call it, but it's basically very simple. As you can see here, I'm going to just try to zoom in a little bit so that you guys can see it. This, what you're seeing is, by the way, Open API spec example from Swagger itself or from SmartBear. So this is showcasing a concept of a pet store, and it is, as you can see here, you need to have the info object. It puts some description. It says like this version of this API is 1.0.0. The title of this API definition is Swagger Pet Store. There is a terms and service contact. This is done by this particular team. They're doing it as a Apache 2.0. If you want, you can also put your server information, like the host is here. The base path is here. We are running at version 2. Some tagging, like you can use different Open API for different APIs, or you can put a lot of things under one thing. For example, what this example is showcasing is I have APIs related to pet, APIs related to store, APIs related to user in the single document, in the single definition, and our API is available in HTTPS and HTTP. Now comes the interesting part, the paths. I have a /pet, and then I'm going to do a post, and this belongs to this. We are just tagging, saying like, okay, this path belongs to the pet category. There is a summary for that, and then there's no description. We give it an operation ID. Then we say like this can consume, because it is post, it can consume JSON or XML. So you're defining your API right here, and with this information, like, okay, I can consume JSON or I can consume XML, so you can send me anything. Then it says that the output of this is it will be producing a JSON or an XML. And then what is the parameter? Well, in the body, we will have a schema. I mean, we will have the payload coming in the body. So how does the body look like? Well, here's a reference. Go look for a component definition called pet. So that's the, remember the payload that I created, similar. So like that, you keep defining your operations. There's a bunch of operations available here, right? And then here is the security definition. As I was talking about, we are saying like we use a OAuth 2 implicit flow. The scopes that we are looking for is write::pets, read::pets, and also we support the API keyway, and we are looking for a header called API key, API underscore key in the header, and it needs to be there for this particular API to work. So these are the definitions, as we call it, or this is the components, right? I have an order component. It contains identifier, pet ID, quantity, ship date, status, and notice here, why should we separate between API description and authentication, authorization, role-based part? No, I never said we need to separate. I said the authentication, authorization, implementation is not here in this particular definition. And notice here, I'm defining what my API will use as an authentication mechanism, not the authorization. Authorization you cannot define here. The only thing that I can do is scopes, right? I have here, I'm using a OAuth 2 implicit flow, and the authorization URL is here. And the scopes that I'm looking for is this. This is authentication. My API is now protected with an OAuth 2. I'm saying like my API expects you to send me an OAuth 2 token, and you better have the scopes called write pets and read pets. Oh, sorry, I don't know what I did. Let me come back again. So yeah, just don't get confused. The implementation is different, and here we are just describing the authentication and authorization, what we support in our API. I mean, this is describing, as I said. Right. Then we took a look at the. Let's take a look at other things, definition. So this is how the order will look like, category. So all these things, and notice here, if I have one operation called delete, I can also say what are the responses that this particular endpoint can send. It can send a 400 invalid username supplied. It can send a 404. Well, user not found. You're trying to delete something. I mean, in this case, it's deleting a user. Well, the user name is supplied is invalid, or I cannot find the user. So that's what you're doing. You're describing, hey, look, I support this particular operation called delete. I'm expecting these parameters, and then I will be responding with this many responses. Now, because of this Open API specification being a standard, look at the neat UI that can be generated on the right-hand side. This is what Swagger UI is all about. This is where ASP.NET folks started looking at like, this looks nice. This is the Swagger UI that we know of. If you use Swashbuckle or anything, because of the description, the specification that I've described, it now tells me that, look, under pet, you have this many operation, under store, you have this many operation, under user, you have this many operation, and these are all the models that we expect. Order ID is an integer, pet ID is an integer, blah, blah, blah. So take a look at it, right? Now, what I've done is, in the interest of the time, I've already generated, or I've already designed our to-do API. I'm going to just bring it up and then use it now. So let me bring up my to-do API. So this is how my to-do API looks like. So let me just zoom a little bit. So it says Open API info, Contoso to do API version description servers. Well, it's available here, so don't worry about the server. It's just a dummy. And then I've defined my component, right? You know, the schema, the to do payload, right? It's an object. It contains an ID integer. Text is an integer. Is completed is Boolean. Default is false. Take a look at this. This is also, we can go ahead and then describe it. I have a created field. It's a string. It's the format is a date time, completed string date time, and user type is also a string. And then I just have one tag here called to do. How do we move the code? Okay, let me check. How do we move the code from Swagger to this format? Is it simply copy paste Swagger to this format? I'm not sure what you mean by Swagger to this format. Swagger is a bunch of tools. OpenAPI is the specification, or OpenAPI is the standard. So if you already have let's say ASP.NET Web API and you want to generate a OpenAPI spec, well, Swagger can help you with that. It is meant for that. You put the Swagger Open NuGet package into your project, and then you go to its endpoint. It will be able to describe your API, and you can download that API spec. Okay, now in my case, remember the notepad that we did? I have this many, end paths, and then this many operations. So that's exactly what I've done. Paths, to dos. I can get a to do, list to dos, get all to dos for a user. Responses, I will be sending back 200. Content is a JSON content. The schema is actually an array of to dos. So take a look at this $ref component schemas to do. That is what this guy will help you to do. Basically, describing everything. And then on the same to-dos path, I also remember I have a post. It's add a new to-do. So it belongs to the to-do tag. It's a create to-do operation ID, some description, request body, to-do object that needs to be added. The content for the request body is a JSON, and then it should look like this guy. That's all, very simple. Responses, if successful, I'm going to send you 201. If invalid input, I'm going to send you the 405, right? And then so whenever you're doing a code gen, where should the payload be looked at? Well, it should be looked at in the request body. So the code generators understand what this line means. That's what this is all about. Then remember, we have the single getting a single to do or updating a single to do. So I have to do / to do ID. It's a get. I'm reading that particular this particular API. Endpoint, and then the parameters is basically the to do ID. It's in the path description ID of to do to return required true. Yeah, you got to have it. The schema is an integer of integer 64 in 64. Response is I'll give you 200 if I found a to do, else 400 if you do invalid ID, 404 if the to do cannot be found, and then post updating a single to do, and then deleting a to do. That's it, right? Now, if I copy this, go to Swagger editor, clear out whatever is here. Let's say file clear editor, and then I paste mine. Notice what happened on the right hand side, right? Because I've used the standard, because I've used the specification, whatever OpenAPI says, I've described my API. Now Swagger UI is able to figure out like, oh yeah, this is Contoso to do API. It is currently at 1.0 and it uses the Open API specification 3. And this description of this is Contoso employee to do management API. I've written the bare minimum Open API spec. That is enough. And then to do everything about to do get. Notice here, it will return you at 200. It will give you an example of how this looks like. Everything has been auto-generated by Swagger UI because we were in the, we use the specification. It's fantastic if you go start reading up on these things. This is how we do it. Is there a tool to create the specification? Good question. So what I showed you was by hand. Let's say in the Swagger editor, you can do like this. If you see here, I'm doing Open API, and then Swagger editor is trying to auto-complete it. So I can say this. Now I can do like, info. So I can do this. Notice here, I just do a info tab, and Swagger editor is able to provide me a lot of things like title, blah, 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 all those things. And then I can do paths. There you go. And then I can do my paths. Right, like this. So this is completely by hand crafting it. Now I'm going to go to Visual Studio, sorry, Visual Studio Code, there is one fantastic extension available. Let me show you that. So I've already gone ahead and then installed this extension called OpenAPI. So if you go to, if you say VS Code OpenAPI extension, there is one extension that has been done by this guy called, so OpenAPI Swagger Editor. There are a bunch of them available, so it's up to you, whichever you want to use. I think I'm using this one. I didn't remember from whom I have downloaded it. Let's see who it is. This is from 42 Crunch. I think I used another one, which is not this one. Yeah, so you can use whichever you want, and then let me look at my Visual Studio Code. Where is my Visual Studio Code? Yeah, here. Let's see from whom am I using. So let's take a look at the extensions, and then Open API. Where is my installed? So as you can see, there are a bunch of OpenAPI tools available. I installed probably this one, which is the 42 Crunch. Okay, we're gonna quickly move ahead. So what I have done is I've already installed that extension. So I click on that extension. It says new OpenAPI file. So now notice here what I get on the right hand side. I'm getting like general info. Well, you can do an OpenAPI info. So there you go. So it has already written that. And then in the paths, it is, I can go ahead and then write another path here. So what do I need to do? Oh, well, add a new path. There you go. So now I can just say to dos, and then I know it is a get, and then I can do whatever I want. Now let's say I have to dos, and on the to do, I need to add a new operation. So I can just do this. So it will say, hey, what operation do you want to do? Well, I want to post, right? And then I also have components here. Remember, I was trying to do the JSON payload for the to do. So you can here say like OpenAPI add object scheme. So notice here, it just puts the component schemes. The name is to do. Then property is ID. Type is integer. Then I can do title. Type is a string. Required is true, or something, all those things you can do. Required true, for default value, whatever you want to do. So you can do like default, probably you can say like new to do. What the code generation APIs will do is, well, they'll take a look at this and like, okay, I need to set it to new to do. I'm going to do that. And then you can define your APIs here. If you see here, add a new security entry. So this is one way. You need to pick your tools. I'm mostly like this guy, Visual Studio, and then start cranking around because I already have my notepad, and it's very easy for me to go ahead and then just replicate this. So if I have to open up my, there you go. This is what my definition will look like. I have two paths, /to-dos, and then /to-do ID, and then to-do ID has delete, get, post. To-dos has get and post. And then I'm also having a component called to-do, and then there it is. So right, so this is where you typically design it using whichever way you want. There is a bunch of editors available. I can actually show it to you in Insomnia also. Insomnia, the only thing that I saw with Insomnia is it doesn't come up with what do you call, there's something called as Insomnia Designer. It does not come with auto completion, so it's a little hard, but I like their UI. I'm big fan of Insomnia as an alternative to Postman. So there you go. I can go into design, and notice here they do exactly the same. So I can paste my thing here, and notice here, because it is built on Open API specification, Open API standard. Notice I'm using different tools, but everybody is able to understand my API. They know what is the name of it. They know what is the description. They know how many paths are there, and then each path, what operation I'm doing, and they also know what schema I have. That's because of the Open API spec. This will be very helpful to your consumers. I've worked in enterprise projects wherein like I'm the central API team. Then I have 4 teams which are consumers of my API. So I need to make sure that we are all in sync. So what do? Well, we start out with the spec and we say like, look, take a look at the spec. If anything changes, get a notification for this change, and then you can react to what the change we have done. All those things. Insomnia has this neat little on the left hand side. If you see here, servers, and then on the paths, if you see here, you have to do, get, and post, all the stuff. So it's up to you, whichever tool you want to use. You can use it. Postman also has this new concept called create an API. So what I'm going to do is I'm bringing up my Postman now. And in the Postman, you will need to go into the APIs, and then you will need to say like new API. So I'm going to say Contoso to do API, and let's say version is 010. It uses 30. I need the format as YAML. I can import the schema if I want. It's optional, but what I can do is I already have it. So I'm going to show you how to create it. So I'm going to say create. Yes. Now, if you look at the define, notice here it has already created the default whatever is required for you, and then they also have schema validation. For example, let's say I make a mistake in one of the line number 7. I have a mistake, and notice here it already says like validation error contains an invalid property paths. There's nothing called paths, missing required property paths. So this is fantastic from Postman. But the thing is, you will need to have an account in Postman, and then start working towards. But if you are a team, I highly suggest Postman, because in my project, in my company, we have team accounts, and then it's so breeze. My tester is here, my developer is here, I'm here at the, doing reviews, and then making changes or whatever, and then we set up our collections or whatever. So as you can see, now I can drop my API here, and then that's it. And not only that, they have this concept of mock server. I can create a mock server, and then based on this definition, I have already created a working prototype of my API without even writing a code. Well, that's not the objective of this session. So we will quickly build the code. I don't know if we need to finish in 7 minutes, or if I have some more time, maybe I'll ask the organizers. Asif, do I have time?
Yeah, I think you can continue, because
okay. Yeah, so I just maybe need like 10-15 minutes. If everybody is okay, like, just hanging around with me for next 10-15 minutes. So now we have the API spec generated. So let me show it to you where I have kept it. So here is my API spec. I have created it here. Typically, it is advised, or if you look at the spec itself, it is advised to name your YAML files as openapi.yaml. Okay, there's no hard limit. Okay, thank you. So I thought I'm going to finish it in 1 hour, and I speak a lot, so I'm running behind time. So sorry about that. So from a perspective of the spec or anything, it's basically they say like, what? You should name it as openapi.yaml. But I went and then I said, okay, this is to do API spec.yaml. It's up to you. There's no hard and fast rule. Anything that works for your team, anything that works for your organization, for your team, that's fine. But keep in mind that, yes, if you are an API and then you're defining your API as a spec, well, it's supposed to be named as OpenAPI. Now, what I'm going to do is what we saw till now is creating the OpenAPI spec. We had a problem statement, create an API for to-do management of employees. So we have created the API spec. Now comes the biggest thing. That's fine, I've designed it, but how do I generate the code, right? So I have my OS, the OpenAPI spec. Now I want to generate the code. Use the OpenAPI specification to generate the code. Now let me show you one fantastic thing from Swagger Editor. So I'm going to bring back my spec, paste it into Swagger Editor. Notice here, I hope you can see my screen. It says generate server, generate client. Whoa, what does this mean? Well, this is an API that you have described. Now I need to build a producer and I need to build a consumer too, right? Somebody has to consume it, somebody has to produce it. Well, not a problem. If you describe your API completely, I spend a lot of time just discussing with my team, with my boss, with my customer that, hey, how do you want it to be looking like, your APIs to look like? We spend a lot of time. Once we are like, okay, absolutely clear that this is what we want, that's when we go and then start generating the code. Now, if you use Swagger editor, as I said, Swagger is nothing but bunch of tools from SmartBear, which understands open API spec, and then it can give you this editor, it can give you this UI, and also it has a code generator. Notice here how much of, how many technology stack you can generate the code by with just one API spec. You can do an ASP.NET Core, Go Server, Inflector. So let's take a look at ASP.NET Core. Let's assume we want to do it. Boom, it's done. Look at here, it just generated the code. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly extract it. Where should I extract? So let's go to OpenAPI. By the way, I'm just showcasing this ASP.NET Core, but we're going to be doing functions, so don't worry about that. It is just to show the capability of the OpenAPI. So yeah, I'm going to do here ASP.NET Core Server generated, and then I'm going to say extract. And I'm going to say open with, OK, let's do open folder. And I'm going to bring up Visual Studio Code. New window, and I will say open folder. There you go. And let's take a look at the code. Boom, it has created to-do API. Here is my to-do API controller. Route v1/todos, create to-do. OK, yeah, I know it has to resolve all this one, but that's fine. And notice here what it has done. It has created the bare bones of your API. It will be a virtual action result create to do. To do is coming in the body. Remember, I said code gen from body. This is exactly why you need that line, so that the code generators can understand, oh, yeah, this is a create to do, and we are expecting the a body from the body of the request, right? Status code 201, status code 20405 to do. Notice how neatly Microsoft has done, the Swagger editor has done it. To do, uncomment the next line to return response 201, response 405. Now your consumer is absolutely sure has to, OK, I'm going to just get one of these things. And that is how they will write their code, right? Here is V1 to do ID. So I'm going to do 200, 400, 404, blah, 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 all those things. Not only that, it also has generated my model. The todo.cs, boom. Take a look at this. I'm not sure why it has put data member, because we are not in SOAP. As I said, I never done this before with the ASP.NET Core. But anyway, notice here, identifier, text is completed. It's a bool. Created, date time, completed, date time, user string. And then there is a toString method also available. Boom. OK, so this is what a spec can allow you to do, quickly generate the code for that. Now, I'm going to quickly go ahead and then take a look at the client. OK, oh, I want C#.NET 2. I have no clue what they mean by .NET 2. I'm assuming they're saying .NET Core 2.0 maybe. That's OK. But yeah, there is C#, there is C#.NET 2. I think it is going to generate again one more. So let me take a look at this. So this is basic. This is now we are creating the client. OK, so I'm going to go back to this OpenAPI. And I'm going to say here. Yeah. And then here we have. And then if you see here, note source main C#.NET 2. There's IO Swagger. I have no clue what they're doing here. Yeah, so the API, the client, the model. So basically, they're generating the to-do API. This is not the actual API. This is the client. If you see here, open with this one. Yeah, so this is basically the to-do API, which is basically doing the API, the client, the consumer. This is the consumer. Everything has been written. So you just have an API spec, you give it for code generation, and then you can start using it. OK, enough of this one. Now I want to show you what I'm, very, very happy that Microsoft came out with this. Now, the main thing, how to generate code. OpenAPI specification is used as an input. You can generate the server-side code. You can generate the client-side code. We saw that. Now, the most interesting thing and the most happiest thing for me is generating Azure functions. Microsoft came out with a open source library called AutoRest. It's not new, it's been there. We were using AutoRest to generate the clients for any REST APIs. Now, what Microsoft did was they went ahead and then they enhanced it by saying like, oh yeah, we're gonna allow you to create Azure functions also. So the AutoRest is available on GitHub, as you can see here. This is github.com Azure AutoRest. And if you see here, the AutoRest tool generates client libraries for accessing RESTful web services based on the OpenAPI specification. Now, what I'm using is I'm using AutoRest Azure Functions capability, and it is here. It is Azure and then AutoRest dot Azure Functions TypeScript. So basically, they're saying TypeScript, but you can go and then use C# also. So where exactly is it? Okay, I'm going to use Bing to point me there. Azure Functions C#, and here it is. Right, so this is the C# code generator for AutoRest v3. So it can generate basically anything that you think of. I'm using basically the Azure Function version. Where did it go? AutoRest. Nope. Azure Functions C#. Just give me a second. Interesting. AutoRest dot Azure Functions C#. Yeah, here it is. So the repo is github.com Azure AutoRest dot Azure -functions -C#. So it's as simple as just doing this. You first need to install AutoRest. If you see here, npm install AutoRest. So I've already done that. So let me bring up my terminal. So if I do AutoRest -- version, I already have the, oh, what? This is why they say never update before a demo. I just updated AutoRest just before the demo. Probably something is broken. So let me see. AutoRest help. We will see that. Yeah, it's the first time after my update, so probably it's getting. Oh, there you go. So it has C#, Go, Java, Python, Node.js, TypeScript, Ruby, PHP, Azure Resource Schema, or whatever. So all those things are available. So how do we generate it, right? All you need is input file. Remember, our input file is the spec file. So typically in my projects, what we do is, let me bring up my, oh, I closed it. Okay, so let me bring up our my file explorer. I'm gonna go to, yeah, OpenAPI. So let's assume this is your root of the repo. Let's say I'm going to say this is mssgug. So that's my root of the repo. So the folder structure that we typically do is something like this. You will first create like what's your project, or if your root is already, let's say, okay, let's rename this to to-do API. That's your repo name, right? So then first thing that you need, or first thing that I typically do is, since this is an API, I'm going to create a specs folder. And then I'm going to create like an SRC folder. Then I'm going to create like a test folder, right? The SRC is going to contain my, you know, the actual code. So I'm going to copy this folder, go to terminal, and I will pretty much go here. So I'm now at the SRC. Now let's see what the, so I need to do AutoRest. Oh, first I need to copy the spec, remember? So I'm going to go into my OpenAPI, and then I'm going to copy that OpenAPI to-do API specs. I'll paste it here. And in the source folder, I want to generate my the Azure function, right? So I'm going to be here. Let's take a look at the commands now. So only thing that I need to do is, so I need to say AutoRest, then -- Azure Functions C#, right? and then I need to provide the input file. Okay, let me go one level above, then it's easier for me. So I'm at to-do API. I'm going to say auto, or let me copy one by one. So I'm going to say auto rest C# function. Oh, sorry. Well, yeah, okay. So C#. Then I have an input file. My input file is inside specs and then open api.yaml. Then I need to say where should the output folder be posted, or where should it be created. So I'm going to say current folder src, then to do API. And then, yeah, at this point of time, we need to provide the version. I think this is the version of the function generator, basically the code generator 6314. And then we need to provide, we can provide a namespace, right? So I typically do contoso dot, API. So that's my root namespace for now. So I'm going to just do this. And now what will happen is it will read the input file, which is openapi.yaml, and then it will generate the code for me. There you go. There you go. It is doing it. Yes, checking for duplicate schemas, and boom, code got generated. The Azure function has been generated. So let's go take a look at it. There you go. So to do API, I have the spec here. I have the SRC. I have the to do API. So I'm going to open this one in. Okay, let's open it in cd src to do API, and then I will do code insiders dot. And let's take a look at the code. And remember, ours is a to do API, right? So I have a model. There you go. It's the todo.cs. It's exactly what we wrote, which is ID text is completed. And yeah, I did notice that in the ASP.NET Core generator, they use datetime, but in the Azure Functions generator, it is putting the datetime offset. So you got to be a little careful about what you want. I have no clue if there is anything specific that we need to set or something, but yeah, that's okay. And where is the APIs, or where is the Azure Functions? Here it is, public class to do API. It has a logger, and it has a constructor to get the logger from somewhere. And then here are all the functions. This is each one of them is a API, HTTP trigger based API. Notice here each function is saying, hey, HTTP trigger, and at this point of time it is anonymous because we did not say what it is. I mean, in my example, I never said, am I expecting JWT token, or am I expecting a X API or API key in the header? I did not say anything. I wanted to keep it simple, but you can define it, and then the code generators will pretty much do something with it, right? I have the list to dos, create to do, get to do, update to do, and then delete to do. That's it. So our functions have been created. So now what I can do is I can pretty much come in here, go here, and then I'll say run and debug. Well, yeah, we are in .NET Core. Where is my output? Oh, well. No. Cancel. Why are you giving me this? Hang on. The resolution is giving me a little headache. I have no clue what happened. Let me try to go to command line. So where are we? We are inside, yes. So I'm going to say func start. There you go. So I have this many APIs now with me. Localhost 7071 API to do's, API to do's, which is a delete, API to do's, to do ID get, API to do's get, API to do's post. So done. Our function is generated. Now this is one way through the command line. Visuals. Let me go back to my slide for a moment. Now, Microsoft has extensions for everything. So for Azure Functions, also the Functions team came up with an extension, for Visual Studio Code, and you can find this. It's Azure Tools.vs Code Azure Functions. Now, let's see without auto rest how we can do it. Basically, it under the hood, this extension, the Azure Functions extension, under the hood uses auto rest. You don't need to pretty much do that. So now, how do I use the Azure Function extension? First, you need to make sure you already have Azure Functions extension. Where is my extension? Okay, let's. Yes. So here is my Azure Functions. As you can see here, Azure Functions, and then this is the icon. I clicked on it, and it says create new project. So I'm going to say yes. Go ahead, create me a new project. So I'm going to say C:\W open API, and we're going to do just for the sake of it. I'm going to say foo, and then I will say select. Now it is asking me, hey, what do you want to do? Which language do you want to do it in? Well, I want to do it in C#. Now you will see one cool little feature they've added. Notice here, these are all the triggers that you can use to create a function, like HTTP trigger, timer trigger, queue, blob, whatever. They introduced one more feature. Remember, if I'm creating an open API spec, that has to be a HTTP based API, correct? So that is why they added a new feature called HTTP triggers from OpenAPI v2, v3 specification. It's, by the way, is still in preview, but works like a charm. As I said, I updated my auto rest. Looks like it is broken. So what is it saying? Failed to find auto rest extension, needs auto rest to generate a function. Yeah, okay, let me start my Visual Studio again, Visual Studio Code again, and I'm going to try it one more time. Otherwise, I just before this webinar, I updated the auto rest, and then probably VS Code is not happy with it. C:\W open API. Yeah, I'm going to select the foo and C#. Let's hope this works this time. Otherwise, well, that was the last demo that I had for the evening. No. Boom, bummer. Okay, I should have never updated the auto rest. So that's okay. Basically, if it would have worked, it would have generated exactly the same code that the auto rest command line did it, because what Visual Studio, Azure Function Extension team has done is they have used underneath they've used the same auto rest functionality, and then they're, instead of me going to the command line and then typing every command that you saw, the parameters for the command, well, the Visual Studio extension is automatically doing that for us. So when it comes to where should you start, well, this is where you should start. So we saw generating functions, HTTP trigger API. Oh, sorry. So that's my last slide, as you can see. Basically, my idea for today was just to showcase what I do in my day-to-day, project, going through understanding what the customer wants, then sitting with my team, taking a notepad, quickly coming out with all the paths we may need in the HTTP path that we may need, and then I let the team translate that into an open API spec. We check it into the source code. We start doing reviews on it. We make sure that if there is anything new, well, you got to first check it into the spec. From the spec, we then work forward, because the spec, it becomes our living and then breathing document for any day. Any day I go to my spec, I know what my API looks like. From there, we create the folder structure typically based on any industry practice. Source and then test folder, and then you start putting everything there, and then you use the open API, and then you generate your first iteration of your function, and that's how you start with it. So today what we did was we just took the spec, created the bare bones functions project. That's it. And the next journey that we're going to do, I don't know when, the part 2 of this is going to be just take that and then showcase you how we do the DevOps. We use infrastructure as a code, and then we will create the function resource, check in the infrastructure as a code along with the source code, and then we'll see how to go about that. So today, what you learned was Open API spec, Open API standards, and then basically use that as a starting point and then generate code without writing even single line of code. With that, I am done with my demo or everything. If there are any questions that I can take up, I'm free to take the questions now.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks, Lohith. It was really wonderful session. Yeah, we have learned a lot. Hi everyone. If you have any questions, so you can ask. Either you can unmute yourself or you can put in the chat box. And anyhow, we are going to have this couple of 4-part series. So next session will be after 2 weeks in February mostly. So yeah, if you have any questions, you can ask.
There was one from Erwin. Let me just quickly go back. So Erwin said, I usually embed Swagger NuGet into API to .NET Core 3.1 solution I built so that it can describe. Yeah, so that's what I said. Keep in mind, I'm talking about serverless. In functions, even today, not many people know how to get the Swagger working. So there are some workaround by Dev Kimchi. I think his blog name is Dev Kimchi. So Dev Kimchi went ahead and then said like, hey, look, this is how you can do it. But it's a workaround. With Azure Function, there is no native support to spit out the spec for your functions. There's a workaround. But if you're an ASP.NET Core, by all means, this is what you need to do. Go take the Swashbuckle or the Swagger NuGet package, put it into your project, set it up in your startup, and you're done. You will get the this one. What about API definition on the APIM development portal? Is it the same function approach? Good question. Very good question. I don't have any goodies, but it's other way of looking at things. Many people don't start with APIM, but APIM is a good place to do whatever I just now did. Not many people know this, but in APIM, you can just go and then start defining your API endpoint operations, everything, and then extract OpenAPI spec from there. Or you start with OpenAPI spec from your laptop, desktop, whatever, and then you go to APIM and say, oh, by the way, APIM, I have an OpenAPI spec. Please import it. It's up to you which way you want to go. I'm a big proponent of source code, version control, everything. Even today, in my team, we start with code, something that can be source controlled, something that can be reviewed, something that can be put into a PR process. So I don't do APIM. I do API spec, and then we push that API spec once it is ready. In our, you can do a lot of things. You can take the API spec in your CD, the continuous delivery. You can read your open API spec from your folder, and then invoke a REST endpoint on APIM and say, by the way, here's the spec. Please create it. So he's going to create your endpoints on your APIM. So good question.
Yeah, actually, we also like in our project, one of the project we started with directly with the APIM for our.
It's a quick thing.
Yeah, yeah, it's really nice to see that how we do with the open space API specification. Yeah, it's good.
Somebody is typing, so I hope it's a question.
Yeah, great. Louis, I have one question.
Sure.
Here, it's like same for the mocking APIs. It's like suppose if you want to, so we will follow the same, or it's like we can do
mocking. Yeah, the mocking API. That's where Postman shines a lot. So let me give bonus for everybody. So let's try to see if I can do it. Is my screen still visible?
Yeah, it's still visible.
Okay, so that's good. So let me bring up OpenAPI. So before coming here, I did not want to do this because it takes a little bit of extra effort to set this up. So what you do is you go to Postman, you go to API, and then you say new API. So what I've done is I've already done the new API. By default, Postman provides a simple path here called as /user, and there's a get operation, and the parameters is an ID in the query string, and it's the ID of the user, and then it sends 200 response. HTTP 200, and then it's actually sending back a JSON the schema is the user schema. The user schema is nothing but ID, name, tag. That's it, right? Keep in mind, I'm still in Postman. This is my Open API spec. All you can do is you can go to develop and you say add mock server. Okay. The moment you create an add mock server, it creates a mocking server and it creates an environment with a URL to the mock server.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
Nice.
so now notice here, I have already selected my environment called to do API draft mock. If I take a look at that, notice the value here. This is not my server. This is the mocking server.
Oh, okay.
Postman has already created that. Okay, now what I did, I went to collections and then I just added a collection and I said, by the way, can you please use the URL parameter from this particular environment? And it already has /user. Please give me the response. Boom. I did not had to write anything. Postman has already generated the JSON by just looking at the API spec.
Okay. So I have one more question here. So this
Sure.
mocking server can be shared with another
Yes. There are a couple of things that you will need to understand with Postman. I think Postman has a concept. Let me see. Let me try to copy this guy. And I'm going to go to, let me bring up Insomnia. I'm a big tools guy. I mean, I keep playing around with all the tools, trying to see what's good for the team, what's good for the, not the designer. I need the Insomnia. Yeah. So I keep playing around, trying to see what's a good workflow for our team. I want to do automation. I want to make sure nobody comes in between. So I keep looking at what are the things that we can use. So let me go to Scratch, and then I'm going to say new request. And let's say this is the to-do API. And yeah, we have a get. Let me post the mock. This one, yes. And what was the URL? The URL is just this one. Okay, so I'm going to paste it. / user. Yeah, let's send it. Yeah, there you go. It's a public. But I believe Postman has the ability for you to say that this is not a private. Yeah, I know. Okay, let me show it to you. If I go to new API, oh no, sorry. Let's go back here, or let's go back to this guy, develop, add a mock server, create a mock server. I believe, let's say this is Contoso to do API mock collection or whatever. They need to, the way they do it is you need to first create a collection. Yeah, there you go. Make this mock server private.
Oh, okay.
So that means only your team can now access it. If you are an Postman team license, we are heavily invested in Postman because one of the good things about Postman is it gives end-to-end about your API things like documenting. We just document using Postman, and then we extract the PDF and then give it to our customer saying like, go ahead, go take a look at it, read it. This is our API. So we do a lot of things around the Postman. But yes, the mocking server is fantastic. Your testing team just can come in and then start using it like, okay, this is the API, these are the endpoint, this is how the payload needs to look like. Okay, cool, good. So yeah, you can do it.
Okay, thanks a lot. Yeah, really interesting. I'll take a look again back to this. Yeah. It's try. It's really nice.
Any more questions from the audience?
Hi anyone. Hi everyone. If you have any questions, so you can ask. Otherwise, we'll close for this today. And thanks again, Lohith. It was really a very interesting session, and hope we'll have a next session in 2 weeks.
Sure. Yeah, thanks to Nilesh and you guys. You set me up for this day, so thank you very much.
Thanks everyone for joining today.
And everybody have a great evening or good night.
Good night, everyone. Okay.
Oh, I need to say a special hello to one of my friends from Netherlands. He's been logging in from Netherlands. Hey, Roderick. So great. Yeah. So I just I'm last 2 years. I mean, before coming to Singapore in 2019, I was in Netherlands. I was working with a team there.
Oh.
So I just told them like, look, hey guys, I'm presenting. They're like, oh yeah, okay. So and there was one guy from there. So cool. It looks like there's no more questions as such. So yeah. So okay. Thanks, guys. Let me know when's the next one. I need. You said 2 weeks, is it?
Yeah, 2 weeks. I will schedule, and it will be in next 2 weeks, maybe in February second week. Yeah.
Okay. So what I will try to do is maybe put this piece of code that whatever I have into my GitHub so that we can share it on your page or anywhere. And then if you can drop your, when you upload the video, maybe you can put a line there saying like, hey, look, code for this part 1 is here or whatever.
Sure.
And then it's easy for people to pick it up. And then I'll base my second, things out of that. Like that's the starting point for the second part. And then I'll build on that, on top of that.
Okay. Sure.
Cool.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. And then I'm going to log off then. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Okay. Thanks. Bye.